Victims of a Zimbabwe government-sanctioned army operation that killed more than 20,000 people demand compensation. Democratic Republic of Congo opposition leader Felix Tshisekedi returns home to kick off a presidential bid. And we'll tell you about the migrant football players winning over hearts in Spain. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Victims of a Zimbabwe government-sanctioned army operation that killed more than 20,000 people in the mid-1980s say they want compensation and an apology from President Emerson Mnangagwa's government. As Columbus Mavunga reports, President Mnangagwa was the country's security minister at the time.
Opaskosana, a 70-year-old widow, recalls 7 soldiers coming to her house during the operation that killed more than 20,000 people from the Ndebele ethnic group in the mid-1980s.
They asked to discuss a few things with my husband outside. They spent a lot of time discussing, so I followed to check what was happening. One of them asked me to go back in the house. He followed me and raped me.
After realizing they took her husband for being the head of the opposition in their community, she ran away to Bulawayo. She has papers from the magistrate court confirming her husband, then 37, was abducted by armed men. She is bitter with President Emerson Mnangagwa, who was security minister at the time, and his predecessor Robert Mugabe, and wants an apology and compensation.
The government that committed those crimes must compensate the people to show that it accepts responsibility for what happened. The people fought and suffered for the country, and they did not deserve to be killed. Mnangagwa was working with Mugabe.
The Human Rights Commission says the Gukura Wound atrocities were indeed human rights violations. The National Peace and Reconciliation Commission says it is working on bringing closure.
I can't preempt and say we are going to give compensation because we have not engaged with victims. And what we are looking at as a commission is to actually create forums where victims are engaging with the commission. And out of those forums, we will be able then to know what victims would want. So if victims would want an apology, would want compensation, that is what this process is going to be doing.
Journalist Zenzele Ndebele was summoned by police this year after producing a documentary of the 1980s killings. He says while Mugabe left office, most of the operation leaders are still in government, such as Vice President Constantino Chiwenga, who was a brigade commander in charge of raiding opposition properties.
The comrade who said, with the problem of cockroaches and we decided to bring DDT. The guy who said, blessed are those who follow the path of ZANU-PF, for their days shall be, increased on earth. So these are the guys now who are in power, who are talking democracy, good governance. And people are saying, but you guys, you need to go back and tell us about what you did.
That might bring peace to Opaskosana. Columbus Mavunga for VOA News, Bulawayo, Zimbabwe.
Well, tensions are high in the Democratic Republic of Congo ahead of general elections scheduled for December 23rd. The winner of the presidential race will succeed incumbent President Joseph Kabila, who has been in power since January 2001. Viewers Paul Ndiho has more on the upcoming vote.
Democratic Republic of Congo President Joseph Kabila gathered his ministers and party officials last week at his farm in Kingakati at the start of the presidential campaign. President Joseph Kabila announced in August that he would abide by the country's constitution and step aside, opening the door to the first ever democratic transfer of power. His announcement calmed tensions that had seen dozens of anti-Kabila demonstrators killed by security forces, since he refused to step down when his constitutional allowable mandate expired in December 2016. Kabila is backing Emmanuel Ramazan Shadary as the presidential candidate of the Common Front for Congo, a coalition of ruling parties.
I'm convinced that the work of rebuilding the Congolese state, initiated by the President of the Republic, His Excellency Joseph Kabila Kabange, and which marks the way forward for us for an emerging Congo, will indeed remain the source of inspiration for all my political commitment.
A mineral-rich country that has never known a peaceful transition of power since its independence from Belgium in 1960. In a bid to present a combined front against President Kabila's preferred successor, 7 opposition leaders earlier this month chose a joint presidential candidate, businessman and lawmaker Martin Fayulu. Fayulu drove through the streets of Kinshasa, where he was greeted by thousands of supporters.
Our objective is to achieve credible elections, that is, elections with paper ballots, without voting machines, with a clear and clean electoral list, so that the Congolese tomorrow, when they have voted, that the results reflect their vote.
Police used tear gas to disperse crowds that had overtaken the main road from the airport. For a brief moment, it looked as if Congo's splintered opposition was united. But those hopes were short-lived as opposition party leader Felix Tshisekedi, who had initially backed Fayulu as the joint candidate, later withdrew his support, along with UNC party leader Vital Kamerhe. The UDPS is the oldest and biggest opposition party in the DRC. It was co-founded in 1982 by Felix Tshisekedi's famous father, who died in February 2017. According to the DRC Constitution, the president is elected in a plurality vote in one round. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
Well, for more on Congo's December general elections, VOA's Anastasia Tudeshe joins me now by phone from Kinshasa. Good evening, Anastasia.
Good evening, Vincent.
Yes, now, how is the atmosphere in Kinshasa 6 days after the launch of this presidential round of election campaigns?
Well, Vincent, it depends on who you are, actually. Let's start with the Congolese people. I would describe their mindset with an oxymoron, cautiously hopeful. And it is, Vincent, a bipartisan mindset. Mm-hmm. Every and any Congolese I've spoke with told me they are yearning for a good job, access to affordable health care, good and affordable education for their children. And each supporter is convinced naturally that their candidate will be the agent of change, and that the other, the other contenders are wrong.
Well, very, very high expectations. How can you describe the politics in the DRC at the moment?
Well, the political scene, I would say blurry. That would be a nice way to put it. Messy would be another word of choice of word. Now we have 3 main contenders, 2 from the opposition, Felix Tshisekedi and Martin Fayulu and Mr. Shadary. Well, the scene is divided because the opposition is divided, and each camp is inviting very kindly the other camp to come. So it's a war of words, and these are very kind and nice words. We'll see as the campaign, follows, if they stay calm and polite and call themselves brothers. Yeah. The campaign is divided also geographically. In Kinshasa, you can see that really the presidential campaign is on. But what our viewers should know is that these elections are general elections. So Congolese people will pick a president, but also deputies. Mm-hmm. And it seems that inside the country, the deputies, the local deputies, are more, you can see them more than the presidential candidates. And what what we know is it's because people are waiting for money to launch the campaign, and the money has not arrived yet.
Very quickly, Anastasia, tell us about the church. We know it has been very influential in the past, at least in calling for peace and fair elections.
Very much so, Vincent. And Monsignor Ambongo, the newly appointed Archbishop of Kinshasa, a very powerful man, insisted, I met him on an interview one-on-one, and he insisted that he will advocate for change and remind everybody to, have that in mind. And he condemned killing and name-calling and was hoping for dignity and hope for the Congolese people.
Mm-hmm. Well, Anastasia, we do appreciate very much the insight. Our thanks to viewers, Anastasia Tudishin. Now, for more in-depth discussion on the upcoming DRC elections, be sure to join VOA Television, Radio, and Internet in 90 minutes for Straight Talk Africa as host Shaka Shali and his guests talk about the December 23rd vote. Well, on the African island nation of Madagascar, an ex-president and the man who overthrew him in a 2009 coup are set to compete to become the next leader in a runoff election on December the 19th. The High Constitutional Court ruled on Wednesday that the two men topped a first-round vote that eliminated the incumbent. Former President Marc Ravalomanana garnered 35% of the vote in the first round on November 7th, behind his successor, André Rajoelina, who got 39%. Incumbent President Henry Rajoelina drew just almost 9% and will not take part in the second round. Now, the court rejected his request for the vote to be cancelled and Rajoelina's votes invalidated, saying there was insufficient evidence of widespread irregularities. Well, 10 Cameroonian separatist leaders extradited from Nigeria earlier this year are scheduled to face trial next month on terrorism charges that could lead to the death penalty. That's according to one of their lawyers. The accused include Julius Ayuk Tabe, the leader of an Anglophone separatist movement in Western Cameroon, fighting to break away from the Francophone-dominated central government. The trial is set to begin on December the 6th. Hundreds of people, including civilians, separatist fighters and Cameroonian security agents, have been killed in violence this year, which has emerged as the most serious security threat to President Paul Biya, who has been in power for 36 years. A separatist insurgency gained momentum in 2017 following a government crackdown on peaceful protests by Anglophones who complain of being marginalized by the French-speaking majority. Violence from both sides of the conflict intensified this year, forcing thousands of civilians to seek refuge in Francophone regions. Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Still ahead on Africa 54, the migrant footballers who formed their own team in the Spanish leagues. But first, a look at Wednesday's headlines.
The lyrics could be French,
English,
Portuguese,
Bantu,
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African Beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/AfricanBeat.
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump and China's leader Xi Jinping are set to meet to discuss trade issues on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Buenos Aires this week. The head of the U.S. National Economic Council says there is a good possibility a deal can be achieved to cool down the ongoing U.S.-China trade war, but warns the Trump administration will consider additional tariffs if no deal is struck. VOA's Patsy Widakuswara reports from the White House.
Leaders are preparing for the annual gathering of the world's top 20 economies in Buenos Aires, Argentina this weekend. And two will be in the spotlight as the ongoing trade war between their two countries continues. U.S. President Donald Trump will meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the G20 summit. White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow says President Trump is open to a deal with China with some caveats.
Issues of intellectual property theft must be solved. Forced technology transfers must be solved. Significant tariffs and non-tariff barriers must be solved. Issues of ownership have to be solved.
If no deal is made, the White House will consider hiking tariffs on $200 billion of Chinese imports and adding tariffs on another $267 billion worth of imports. Former U.S. Ambassador to China, Winston Lord.
President Trump is correct to try to correct the economic inequities, although I think the tariffs is the wrong way to go about it, and it's better to have his more recent emphasis on forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, subsidies to Chinese companies, etc.
Meanwhile, Beijing has warned that a trade war could lead to a fragmentation of the global economy.
Under the circumstances, when global trade and investments are in great difficulties, G20 has the responsibility to discuss trade and investment protectionism and need to send out a clear signal against unilateralism and trade protectionism.
A cooling down of trade tensions will help ease financial market concerns worldwide. Investors will be looking for signals that the two sides are willing to resolve trade differences. The Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in mid-November failed to produce a joint statement, largely due to differences between Washington and Beijing. The world will be watching whether the G20 will be a breakthrough or another stalemate. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News at the White House.
Well, Washington's National Museum of Women in the Arts is the only museum in the world that showcases creations made exclusively by women. But in the 3 decades since it's first opened, the museum has never had exhibits dedicated to fashion until now. In November, it opened an exhibit dedicated to the famous American fashion house Rodarte. Karina Bafradesian has the story.
The National Museum of Women in the Arts in Washington has been preparing for the Rodarte exhibition for almost 2 years. It is an important event because this is the museum's first retrospective of the award-winning fashion house and also the first exhibit dedicated to fashion in the museum's history.
Fashion is a world, an industry that is so geared towards women, but it's not an industry that's always dominated by women at the top. When you think of a lot of top designers, a lot of them are men. So we wanted to take the opportunity to highlight women designers who are at the top of their game in their field.
Rodarte is a relatively young fashion house. Founded in 2005 by sisters Kate and Laura Malivi, it managed to win over critics around the world. Rodarte has received a number of fashion industry awards, and while it is less well known than Versace or Dolce & Gabbana, Kate and Laura say popularity is not their goal. Professional acknowledgement and recognition is what they're after.
They're no strangers to the art world. In fact, Kate Malivi has a background in art history. She studied that in college, and Laura studied English literature. They don't have any formal fashion training. They really started this out of a desire to have fashion be a creative outlet for them.
The dresses Rodarte makes are more suitable for exhibiting in a museum than on city streets. Flowing fabric, intricate decorations and jewels, they're like a wearable piece of art. The brand has grown fast. Kate and Laura made the costumes for Black Swan, the 2010 American psychological drama. It was the film's main actress, Natalie Portman, who recommended the sisters to Darren Aronofsky, the movie's director. And the young designers didn't let Portman down. The costume turned out beautiful and dark. And though Washington may not be known for cutting-edge fashion, the Rodarte exhibit has inspired many residents.
I think it's really neat. I've never actually been to an exhibit like this, so it's really cool.
I think all DC residents should come see it because during the season there are many black tie and formal events to attend, and I think this stretches people in a new direction.
The exhibition will continue until mid-February 2019. Karina Befredjen for VOA News, Washington.
Well, young footballers worldwide dream of following in their heroes' footsteps and going to Europe to play for the top teams like Barcelona. Now, a group of mainly African migrants have taken a first step. With the help of a sympathetic coach, they have formed their own team in the Spanish leagues. As Henry Ridgewell reports from Jerez, the club offers far more than a weekend of soccer practice for the young men, many of whom have risked their lives to reach Spanish shores.
Sunday morning in the suburbs of Jerez, and two local teams are battling relegation. The third tier of the Andalusian League may not attract many spectators, but for the players of the team Alma de Africa, football means family. The team, whose name means Soul of Africa, is made up of migrants plus a few locals to help integrate the newcomers. Modou Ndiaye left Senegal 2 years ago and spent 10 days at sea before landing on the Spanish island of Tenerife.
To see the players happy for a while makes me feel good, because we can forget about the bad things in life. Because I was a footballer in my country, the day I arrived, I asked around for a team to play with. I went to Jerez Football Club for 2 weeks, but the coach told me I cannot play because I do not have the right papers. He told me to go and find Alma de Africa.
It began 3 years ago when locals spotted a group of migrants playing football in a park. They would often argue, so the locals found a referee, and in stepped Alejandro Benitez. On the pitch, Benitez saw talent, off it, deep vulnerability. So he set up a team and persuaded the Spanish football leagues to let them play. Alma de Africa was born.
We started from nothing. We put in our own money. The problem is that every year we have to start from zero.
Benitez appears to be a father figure for many of the players.
At the end of the match, we cannot let them go back to their old way of living, selling stuff at traffic signals, washing cars. We need more than footballs. We need apartments so they can avoid living on the streets. We need classes so they can learn the language more quickly. We need support to get them into the labor market so we can show that diversity is not negative, it is positive.
Claiming asylum and getting the right legal papers can take years. Finding steady work is all but impossible. But slowly, Jerez is becoming home. Modou Ndiaye makes enough money from odd jobs to pay for an apartment. Local businesses are stepping in. This upscale Jerez restaurant offers dozens of young migrants training in catering.
Before, I believed it would be a better life in Spain, but if you do not have a job, it is very difficult.
Alma de Africa supports a handful of the tens of thousands of migrants arriving every year in Spain. It also aims to change attitudes through a shared passion. On the pitch, the team is struggling. The bigger challenge is to find the money to keep this football family going forward. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, Jerez, Spain.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Frohat tilts his or her head, smiles, exudes empathy and warmth, and encourages us to open up emotionally. Now, the robot aims to build on our newfound ease with talking to voice assistants like Siri and Alexa by persuading us to interact with it as if it were a person, picking up on our individual cues to strike up a rapport. Yet because it isn't human and is therefore free from unconscious bias, the robot can spur people to engage it with a little more honestly, its creators say, and making it useful in situations such as screening for health risks. And that's because a robot's personality can mirror the personality of the person interacting with it, and because people don't feel judged by a robot. Well, next up, Jakarta's National Monument Park in the heart of the Indonesian capital is welcoming new attractions, shared bikes. Around 100 bikes are available to hire for free during the trial period from 7 stations dotted across the park. They are unlocked by scanning a QR code on the bike using the app. The company behind the project started out developing digital maps, but ventured into bike sharing following global hype. Dockless bike sharing, which was first seen in China, is now going global, with several companies bringing their own bikes to towns. Well, and finally, in the Australian capital of Canberra, Taekwondo classes for children with disabilities are helping to break down barriers and improve the behavior of students. The martial arts classes are designed for children with autism and other disabilities, providing a more inclusive place for them to learn and be themselves. The classes are designed for kids ages 6 to 12 of all ability levels. Not only is the class building confidence, the instructor says even the children's classroom grades are improving. And that's what's trending today. Now, there are plenty of places to get a cup of coffee in the U.S. western city of San Francisco. But a new kind of cafe offers espressos and cappuccinos made by a robot. Viewers Michelle Quinn stopped by to see if a robot can make a good coffee latte.
Did it just wave at us? There you go.
Meet Robin, a robotic barista who can make a cappuccino or 5 in minutes.
All right.
This robot works at Cafe X, whose slogan is, "Come for the robot, stay for the coffee." Robin doesn't get tired, doesn't go on breaks, and it makes an Americano exactly the same way each time.
It's always going to use exactly the same quantity of bean, the same milliliters of milk or water, the temperature is going to be the same.
This robot barista is more than a glorified vending machine. It is a combination of hardware and software. A 6-axis Mitsubishi arm, algorithms to figure out how to juggle multiple orders, and sensors to detect cups and check on dwindling supplies. Nearby, a human hovers in case there is a problem with the robot and chats with customers about the origins of the coffee beans.
We sort of really see this as a human-robot collaboration. You know, how can you enhance the productivity of an existing barista?
And the robots have been programmed to have a little personality.
So we have a wave, which is very popular. People really like to see the robot wave. We also have a sort of voila kind of gesture, being like, hey, here's your coffee. Our V2 machine does little dances in between to try to attract passersby.
And how do customers feel about robot coffee?
I feel like this is a level I'm comfortable with, and I don't know about any more than that.
I think there's a lot of repetitive work that people would not want to do. At the same time, I think robots need a tremendous amount of human interaction to get it to the point where it can make a cup of coffee. So
this cafe presents a vision of collaboration. Working robots and human workers coming together around coffee. Michelle Quinn, VOA News, San Francisco.
Good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Liquid boils when it is heated to a certain temperature.
Boils down to this.
So Jonathan and Anna are probably talking about cooking. Or are they?
I got a job offer.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thanks. But the job is in California. All my friends and family are here in D.C.
Look,